this week we get to talk to Emma Morris. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity just to find out a little bit more about your story, Emma.
I grew up in Portsmouth, but I now live in Manchester. I live with my husband, Peter Morris, and I am a special needs teacher in a special needs school.
Brilliant. What we love about these opportunities when we get to chat to people is the chance just to find out a little bit that probably many of us didn't know of what people's Christian walk has looked like over the years.
Well, I grew up in a Christian family. Yeah, so going to church was just part of my normal life. My father had left before I was born, so my mum raised me as a single parent. So she took a lot from church, and we sort of really did have a strong connection in a church family. Every year we used to go to Spring Harvest, a Christian sort of camp away at a Butlins holiday residence, which for me was great.
Was that a time when things really began to become more personal for you?
Yes, and I remember one night Ishmael from Ishmael and the Glory Company asking those of us who wanted to experience God and to have a relationship with him to stand up. And I was one of the first people that stood up. And the realisation that somebody not only accepted me just as I was, but wanted me, was massively freeing. And basically that began my journey with God. Looking back now, I think I basically can realise that I think I would always assume that my worth was tied up in people having to like me. I used to fear that if people didn't like me, then they'd leave me, as my father had. And realising that actually I had a father in heaven that already liked me, and I didn't need to do stuff. I didn't need to make him like me more. He already liked me, and that he wanted that relationship with me, was just really freeing.
Tell us a little bit about your journey since then.
Well, it was probably only about 3 or 4 years after that my life kind of spiraled out of control a bit. I basically sort of experienced some things in life that initially caused me some pain, and then sort of just I began to shut people out. The longer it went on, I began to shut people out, and I began to shut God out. And just as before it had led to changes in me and in my behaviour, shutting God out also began to lead to changes in me and changes in my behaviour. Before I'd kind of been allowing my relationship with God to guide my decisions, and now I was taking a lot of that control, and I was deciding that I knew the best way and I was going to make the decisions. And it turns out that a lot of those decisions weren't very good decisions. There's a character in the Bible called David, who I can really relate to. He started off as a young shepherd boy, had a really good relationship with God. I can sort of imagine him sitting on the hillside, looking after the sheep, chatting away to God. And as he grew up and he got older, he got complacent in his relationship with God. He didn't put the time into maintaining that. And you can kind of sort of read about some of the really bad life choices he made. And as I say, I was doing the same. You know, I was making some really bad choices around alcohol, drugs, self-harm. And at the time, I thought that the pain that I felt and my perceived injustice of my situation made my decisions acceptable. And all those things were true, and they probably made my choices look more understandable to onlookers, but they didn't make them good choices, and they didn't make them acceptable choices to God. And to basically cut an incredibly long story quite short, basically some near misses, some pretty big life changes in my life, forming some really strong Christian relationships and seeing some strong Christian role models, allowed me to start sort of rebuilding a bit of a relationship with God. And I basically can remember at one point swallowing my pride, and going back to the God that I'd first begun to get to know as a kid. And finding that once again, not only did he accept me just as I was at that point, but that he still wanted me, despite all the bad choices I'd made and the way that my life had gone. He still wanted me. At the moment, I think I still find it way too easy to continue to make mistakes. And particularly a lot of mistakes that I justify by looking back at past hurts and sort of seem to justify, oh, it's not my fault because this happened in my past. I think the difference now is that I found my freedom in God again. And this time I'm not giving that up. This time I realise what that's worth. And when I make mistakes and when I make bad choices, I know that I can go back to a God that continues to accept me as I am, continues to want me as I am, and understand that God has a call on my life. And the more that I get to know God, the more he helps me change my life, and he changes my life and helps me make better decisions and better life choices.
That is just the most amazing, but sharing your story so openly and transparently, and really, really appreciate that, Emma. It's a great testimony of God's grace and love.
Thanks.